Hey everyone, here's my presentation for the final for media entrepreneurship. This is my venture. I'll call it Apple to Apple. It's going to be a podcast and community based on inclusion, acceptance, and wellness. The name comes from, the term oranges to apples, but instead of having two different types of fruit, we're all the same fruit. So it's tying into mental wellness and, the universality of loving yourself and loving the life that you have. So let's get started. So, some of the main problems that I wanted to focus on when making this venture is fat phobia and body shaming, and this, perpetual nature for society and societal standards to, sort of objectify and devalue our bodies just based on how they look. There's also this lack of education, surrounding these intersectionalities of fat shaming culture and the ways that we end up perceiving ourselves, like age, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, economic stability, etc., etc. And there's also this kind of lack of connection and communication with companies that prioritize body health and body wellness and mental health and mental wellness. So I'm hoping to kind of solve all these problems by creating a podcast that can give this education and create a community and platform for corporations to share their stories and products. So, in discussing these problems, I see a really big opportunity in kind of connecting the, mental wellness world with the podcast and technological social media communication world. Let me put this in better perspective. 55% of the American teen population has experienced some form of weight stigma throughout their educational careers, which increased to 80% by the time that they're adults. This is a huge population of people, and it's stretching across gender identities, sexual orientations, races, classes, etc. 70% of young adults are dissatisfied with two or more parts of their body. 63% holding social media and mainstream culture responsible for these different body dysmorphias and unaccessibility and enjoyment with their bodies. And in conglomeration with this, 55% of the US teen population listens to podcasts. So I feel like combining these two connections and making these relationships can help build a community that is both functional, full of people who could use it, and full of opportunity. So, thus, Apple to Apple is born. It's going to be a platform to recognize, validate, and resolve these different complexities of body shaming, all while providing, the conversations with different individuals and specialists involving body acceptance, health, wellness, overall life happiness, and these different intersectionalities of, weight stigmas, body dysmorphia with other social scripts that influence the way we perceive ourselves. It's going to provide a space and tangible community for these different people who want to find a centering around wellness and care, while also giving opportunities for other body mindful companies to share their stories and kind of connect with our audience by having the similar ideas that we have. So I'm talking a lot about this intangible community. And how does this form as a business model? Well, in terms of business, this is a weekly podcast. It's free to access. It's going to be held on multiple platforms. It's going to be held live on Twitch with the main cast of Apple to Apple, along with specialists, body activists, and more. And then these recordings are going to be posted later in the fact on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and all these different platforms to which people can access it later on if they don't want to catch it live. We're also going to have online socials and different platforms for connections, conversations, access to promotional events, etc., to kind of get the word out there and to get it connected on different posts such as Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, and TikTok. We're also going to have this Patreon that will be the primary source of memberships that have exclusive conversations, different levels of access, so people who do want to financially give help and support the cause can do so. And what I also alluded to previously is we're going to have a subscription box, which will allow audience members to subscribe for a monthly box sent from Apple to Apple with special picked wellness items, packages, and collaborative products from these other small businesses. And to go hand in hand with the business model, we have the revenue model. First, we have memberships, which will be a predominant form of revenue, and the memberships will be from Twitch Live memberships and Patreon memberships, which allows the audience members to, subscribe for their own chosen fee to help support, keep the podcast going, keep supporting the cast and the different people behind the scenes, and to kind of keep the communication in line. There's also going to be the sponsorship thing, which is going to also be a predominant revenue. It's going to be collaborative, sponsoring advertisements auditorily during the podcast, like this episode is brought to you by, etc., etc. There's a plan to have those sort of sponsoring things exempt from membership convos, sort of as like an incentive for subscribers to contribute. There's also going to be these collaborations with different communities. and different ventures that need this kind of platform to share their brand, as I said, through the subscription box and the promotional events, which will be shared on social media and through the live performances, in conjunction with these different sponsorships and stuff. Events surrounding specific topics of conversation, maybe something with the audience interacting and winning potential prizes for participating. So there's 3 different markets that Apples to Apples is applicable to: podcasts, physical and mental wellness websites, and subscription-based product industries. As you can see from the graphic that I included on the form, the podcast industry is huge, especially since coronavirus has started. Thousands upon millions of people are using podcasts to sort of get intel, create new information, and create new communities. So the expectancy is nearly 150 million listeners within the next 5 years, which is a huge amount of people. In tandem with that, this rising awareness and acceptance and focus on mental health care and this rising urge of accessibility and inclusivity in healthcare is also going to be pushing these numbers and really work in Apple to Apple's favor. It is also worth mentioning that the subscription-based product industry has also grown, not only because of coronavirus, but just because of the latest advancements and trendings of online ordering and the convenience of having things shipped to you automatically month by month. So that can generate over $2.6 billion in the total market revenue. So here are just a few example subjects for the podcast. The first one would be, for example, objectification and repulsion. This contradiction of body shame and praise. Society's idealization of fat distributions in certain areas on men, women, and non-binary folks. And, this sort of fetishizations, cultural scripts, and this push for body modification. Episode 2, intersectionalities of gender and body image. The way that gender is a spectrum of presentation and how that kind of influences the way that we view our bodies and the dysmorphia that we so often experience based on these scripts. Episode 3, the dangers of diet culture and online body social media influences and the different ways that we strive for the ill-achievable. Some inspiration and some also competition are these 2 other podcasts focusing on body health: Breaking Body Biases and Rebel Eaters Club. I did notice upon doing further research on them that they're a little restricted in regards to their platforms. They're stuck to their respective websites. They don't have multiple platforms, whereas Apple to Apple plans to. And also their audiences are predominantly for women, cis het women, while Apple to Apple aims to appeal to a broader audience of genders, races, classes, etc. So here is a summary on some of the startup expenses that we will be experiencing in order to get Apple to Apple running, from equipment to production to set design to social media management and general wages. The total amount would probably be around $16,000 to $18,000 with a recurring expense of about 45%. And this is, for the sake of having the best quality podcast presentation, both visually and audibly. That's the cream of the crop coming from this program. So it requires having, a good funding and good supportive equipment and people running it. Here are some glimpses of the Apple to Apple website, which is actually currently in the works. I'm in the process of creating it myself, coding by hand for another class that I'm currently in. So hopefully I'll be able to present it to you all on our final presentation day. But yeah, here are just some 2 examples of what the desktop version of Apple to Apple's main website will look like. And here are some further branding examples, the subscription box, both outside and inside, and the sticker sheet. As you can see by the design and the components of the subscription box, it's kind of teeny, but offers a monthly little glimpse of different companies and their products and the ways that further pushes this script of wellness and happiness. So yeah, that is the epitome of Apple to Apple. Body size is not a metric for health, and health is not a metric for humanly worth. So often we don't hear these words, and I think putting in the efforts into creating a community like Apple to Apple can help recognize and reevaluate our standards of aesthetic and beauty and more focus towards, acceptance and overall happiness, and, building this mentality around being healthy but also loving who we are. So that is my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time.